What's something that happened on a first date that made you decide against a second date? Story 1. I picked her up, and she asked if we could stop by her mom's house so she could run in and grab something. I said sure. We made the stop, and she went inside. 5 minutes later, she comes out hustling towards the car with a car seat, and her mom is chasing after her, yelling. She opens the car door, throws the car seat, which I now see has a baby in it, and starts yelling at me to drive. I freaked out and just turned my car off, taking the keys out of the ignition. Her mom called the cops, and they came and questioned all of us for a good while. It turns out she had lost custody due to substance abuse and was trying to use me as a way to get her child back. We never made it to dinner, and I just went home after the cops left. Story 2. I went to dinner with a girl I had been crushing on for quite some time. It seemed to be going well, and we ended up back at her place, watching a movie or something. Out of nowhere, her boyfriend, whom I was not aware of, came back from out of town and stopped in unexpectedly. He and I had a super awkward conversation for a few minutes, and then the two of them disappeared into another room for a minute or two. She came back and said something to the effect of, "I don't have a place for you. I'm sorry." I just kind of got in my car and drove home, with one of the strangest feelings I'd ever felt. A few minutes into the drive, I couldn't contain myself and busted out laughing. Story 3. The guy told me he would still be together with his kid's mom if she had apologized for what she did wrong. Out of curiosity, I asked what she did wrong, expecting something like she cheated, something that actually needed apologizing for. Nope, apparently she kept nagging one day and wouldn't stop, so he tied her to a computer chair and went out for 3 hours, leaving her there. I said it doesn't sound like she was the one who needed to apologize and left. Story 4. One time I took this girl to dinner, and she could not stop staring at our waiter. I'll grant her one thing. I'm a guy, and can admit this guy was probably very attractive to anyone who prefers men. Square-jawed and muscular, he had that college athlete vibe. I get it, but I didn't appreciate that she literally craned her neck every time the kitchen door swung open to see if he was walking out. Eventually, I gave her enough cash to cover my part of the meal, told her I'd noticed, as though I couldn't have, suggested she could get his contact info when she paid the bill, and left. Story 5. Nothing obvious or overt, but from the minute we sat down to eat, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt unsafe. He was polite, listened, very polished, but I couldn't shake that feeling. I drove to the restaurant to meet him, so he did not know where I lived. After dinner, he asked for another date, and I just said, "No, I don't think we are a good match." I gave him money to pay for my half, said goodbye, and when I got to the door, I turned around, and he was staring at me with an expression I never hoped to see again. I ran to my car, moved it to another spot, and waited until he left before I left so he could not follow me. The restaurant was on an isolated road, so that was safer than having him catch up to me. I found out about a year later that he was sent to prison for the assault and abuse of 2 different women. It happened on first dates. Story 6. Basically, we got back to her place after dinner and were getting slightly intimate on the couch. As things started escalating, she pulled out a giant glass jar, like the ones with the finger loop that pirates put rum in, half full of a clear liquid. My clueless self asked her if it was moonshine or vodka or something. She then proceeded to explain to me that it's a specific substance, and that she has a preference for being drugged off of it before being intimate, and she said that with a completely serious face. For those who don't know, this substance is often associated with inappropriate and illegal activities. She then went to the restroom, and I left so fast that I practically floated off the couch. Never spoke to her again. Story 7. I met this girl on a dating app, and after chatting, she invited me over just hours after matching. All right, sure, things seemed okay through text. Her mom was there and was clearly intoxicated, like mixing painkillers and alcohol intoxicated, mumbling and dozing off and asking me inappropriate stuff. Then her sister and her boyfriend were there, and they were drunk and having a screaming match while we were all just sitting at the table talking and hanging out. She seemed more normal than the other 3 and spent most of the time talking about her daughter. She was older, around 9 or 10, and complained about how she lives in another state and how she never had custody of her, claiming it was because the state always gives custody to the fathers, which is not accurate. So I left and she asked me about a second date. I told her, "Sorry to be blunt, but that was a complete mess, and I was very uncomfortable. I don't think we're compatible." She went off on me saying, "Everyone has a crazy mom, it's normal. And drunk people fight. It's what they do." She accused me of sounding like Child Protective Services and called me a weirdo, and then said I should have disclosed my medical condition. I have no clue what she was talking about. It didn't need to be like that. I would have picked her up, taken her to dinner and a movie or a walk, or literally anything else, but no. She straight up told me to come to her house with her intoxicated mom, drunk sister, and her boyfriend with zero warning. Story 8. 2 times. Farmer dude, showing my age, added me on MySpace. We chatted for a while. I can appreciate a country boy. He seemed pleasant and wanted to meet at McDonald's. Cool. I'm not hard to please, so let's get some Big Macs and chat. We talked for about 10 minutes and it was clear it wasn't going to work. He was almost completely silent. He wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't eat, just sat there. I told him it was nice to meet him, but I had to get home. Later that night, I got about 20 messages telling me how he was into an unusual practice and wanted me to come over and do something inappropriate involving the Big Macs. Yeah, that's a block. Counting Crows dude. Met the guy on a Counting Crows online forum, LMAO again, showing my age, and he happened to live 1/2 hour away. Cool, let's grab drinks at a local bar and see where it goes. I get there, can't find him anywhere, figured I was stood up. Then the lights dimmed and he walked out on stage, clearly intoxicated, slurring every other word. He proceeded to play Round Here and stopped halfway through to vomit on himself. Now I can never hear that song without cracking up. Maria came from Nashville with a suitcase in her, just vomits everywhere. Story 9. While we were having lunch, we ran into a friend of hers I didn't know. He stopped to say hi, and their brief conversation somehow brought up that she owed the guy a meal because he'd paid for their last lunch together. So she offered to pay for his lunch to square it away, and he agreed. He ordered something to go, and they told the waitress she'd pay for it. They both said their goodbyes, and the guy left us alone to wait for his lunch at another table. So far, so good. Though their conversation was a bit strange, it did seem to come up organically. It didn't needlessly drag on, and the guy was nice at all times and also polite enough to make himself scarce as soon as possible, instead of inserting himself into our lunch date with the excuse that he was waiting for his food. We continued our conversation, and everything seemed fine until some time later after the friend had already left, and it was time to settle our check. I realized this girl obviously expected me to pay for the whole thing, including the lunch she offered to pay for her friend as a way to pay him back for the favor he did her. Even if the friend hadn't ordered a pretty pricey meal that cost more than the rest of our check combined, and he had done exactly that, it didn't sit well with me how she had shamelessly decided to pay him back with my money in what seemed like a deliberate scam. So I paid for the whole thing to avoid making a scene, but later brought it up and told her that it wasn't cool. She made it clear that she saw nothing wrong with it and said I was being cheap and childish. So I thanked her for her honesty, told her we were done, and said I wasn't going to be calling her again. She tried to argue that I was overreacting, but I held firm and blocked her a couple of days later because she insisted on texting me to convince me that I was wrong and that we should go out again. Some people really live in an alternate reality. Story 10. The waitress was a lovely young black woman. He referred to her as being attractive for a person of color. He touched her, which is not okay. You don't touch your waitress. He made aggressive looks at another table where a family was dining. They appeared to be Indian, and commented loudly that they were what was wrong with America. He had multiple tequila shots, and his cologne was overpowering. I was so embarrassed. I was raised to be patient and polite, but finally I was like, what am I still doing here? I stood up and left, leaving my half-eaten meal on the table. He yelled insults at me as I was leaving, then texted me when I was out the door. Pure disappointment. Story 11. The first 2 hours were me talking at him. I asked him to start a conversation twice. The first time he talked about the hot weather. It was July in the Midwest. No surprise there. And the second time, he looked at me like a deer in headlights and just stammered that he couldn't. I told myself that there was no way I was going to not give him a second chance. His nervousness also meant that our interactions meant something to him. I was upfront and honest. I told him that I could see he was very nervous and that I wanted to continue seeing him so that he could feel more comfortable with me and have a decent conversation. When we decided to commit to each other, I kept him informed about our progress. I would occasionally tell him that if someone forced me to hypothetically make a decision about spending the rest of my life with him at that instant, I would have to say no because I couldn't say for sure that we would get along. But I was so excited to see where our relationship went because our conversations were improving vastly with each interaction. We've been together for 8 years now. He is still the most self-conscious person I've ever met when it comes to speaking with people he doesn't know. He speaks so much around me now that I have to ask him to hush sometimes. He is the single most sweet, kind-hearted, honest, considerate, supportive, wonderful person I've ever met. And I thank my lucky stars that the other women brushed him off, which meant he was available for me. His confidence has also come a long way too. I get to see all the progress he's made and he's becoming more comfortable in his own skin. I am so proud of him. Moral of the story: I'm not saying that anyone is wrong for who they date and who they don't. And if you get a creeper vibe from someone, do not continue to see them. I'm just saying that if you take time to crack at the surface of a stone, you may find a rare gem inside. Yes, he's still quiet around people he doesn't know, but I talk enough for the both of us, and he's content to let me shine in the spotlight. Story 12. It was my first date. I was 17, working as an office assistant's helper. The guy, 20, also worked there. I don't remember what his job title was. He asked me to the drive-in movies. He came to the house and met my mom. He did the whole song and danced to her about taking good care of me, getting me home on time, all that stuff. I was still nervous though, so I arranged with 2 friends to go to the same movie in their car. My date didn't know. They parked 3 cars down from us. After we parked, the guy was telling me to relax, saying he just wanted company for the movie and that he respected me. So I'm thinking, cool. The movie started. I don't think the opening credits had finished before he was all over me. It was like he grew 4 extra arms in seconds. I pushed him off and said, "What are you doing?" He apologized and said he was sorry, that he thought I'd like it and he couldn't help himself because I was so cute, whatever. I told him I didn't like it and to keep his hands to himself. I got maybe 2 sips of my soda before he tried again. Now I'm angry. I got out of the car, threw my drink at him and walked off. Story 13. I went on a first date to an upscale restaurant and bar. We met at the bar first for a drink to get to know each other, and then I was going to suggest moving over to the restaurant and getting a table. It was a fairly large place with a big bar area. During our drink, I kind of noticed that she kept looking across the bar at this older lady, and the older lady was looking back. It also appeared they were communicating with facial expressions. I wasn't sure, but it seemed very odd to me. After our drink, we moved to a small booth in the restaurant area to get some dinner. We were getting along great, but I kept noticing odd facial expressions from her occasionally. The place had mood lighting, so it was kind of dark, and I wasn't sure. After we finished our appetizer, I excused myself to go to the bathroom, which was behind me. I noticed that the older lady from across the bar was sitting at a small table behind us. She was trying to hide, but wasn't doing such a great job. When I got back to the table, I asked her if she knew who the lady was, and that I thought they were communicating. She confessed that the lady was her mother, and that she always brought her on first dates so she could give her an opinion and rate her date. So far, I was doing well, and her mother thought I was great. I asked for the check, paid the tab, which included drinks and dinner for her mother, and cut my losses. On the way out, I told her to lose my number. Story 14. I went on a date with a man I had previously met on a night out. He seemed nice, so I was looking forward to the evening. We went for a meal first, and as we were talking, I kept noticing he kept doing this weird shoulder twitch. I don't know if he was even aware he was doing it, but it quickly became annoying because I couldn't keep my eyes off his shoulder. He then started telling me a story of how he used to be in the army and how his wife, who was also in the army, had been murdered. They had a child together, and he had brought her up on his own. This was a horrific story, and I sat in stunned silence because I didn't know what to say other than I was sorry that it happened. After the meal, we went to have a drink in a pub across from the restaurant. He immediately picked out a guy in a red top and started saying he shouldn't be around here because it wasn't his territory. He then pulled a knuckle duster out of his pocket and put it on his hand, all while staring at this guy who was just having fun with his friends and hadn't once looked over. The red flags were literally smacking me in the face, so I made some excuses and left. I only dared tell him by text that I didn't want another date. Story 15. He was a really nice guy and we hit it off. We talked on the phone for hours, had similar values, and decided to meet up for dinner at a pretty nice Italian place. He was pretty overweight, 400 plus, and I'm on the heavier side too, mid 200s, so I didn't really care. He also told me at some point during our phone calls that he's diabetic, which made me wary given his age, but we were getting along so well that I thought it could be something I could be okay with. We sat down to dinner, where he proceeded to order 3 cans of soda for himself and the largest plate of food with extra sides. This shocked me because I'm actually really health conscious for my weight, which can mostly be attributed to childhood poverty and an autoimmune disease. I'm overweight, but I'm trying my best to be healthy. I have perfect blood work, go to the doctor regularly, work out a couple of times a week, cook most of my meals at home from fresh ingredients, etc. My concerns with him stemmed from his lack of care for himself and the possibility of needing to care for him long-term if I continued to see him. I wanted a partner, not someone who wasn't making the necessary changes after such a serious diagnosis as type 2 diabetes. I told him afterward that I wasn't feeling a connection and honestly felt like I was betraying the community of plus-size individuals by rejecting him. My therapist heard a bunch about this, but I wasn't attracted to his lack of care for himself. Story 16. Back in college, a guy my not-so-great sister's untrustworthy boyfriend set me up with took me to the public library. I'm a good sport who likes to read, so that wasn't a deal breaker. What was the worst was fighting him off when he tried to get too handsy in the young adult section, listening to him brag about frisbee golf, and then making me walk a mile from said library for Chinese food. He ordered $60 worth of food I didn't want, and had the nerve to pretend to search for his wallet when he had a square wallet-shaped lump in the back pocket of his jeans. After admitting he wasn't going to pay for the food he ordered, he talked about all the activities we could do together in his dorm room. I didn't say anything. I just paid for the food and let him walk me to his dorm. When we got there, I said goodnight and left with the entire bag full of food. I had a good cry on the walk home once I was out of earshot of his swearing. My sister and her boyfriend chewed me out for being rude until I showed them my fridge full of egg rolls and explained that I hoped they liked Chinese because my monthly food budget they mooched off of was spent. In defense of the Chinese place, they made excellent orange chicken, but that was by far the worst date I've ever had. I hope his frisbees melted in the sun. Story 17. My very first date was when I was really young. I don't even know why she said yes, but I had a crush on this girl for the longest time and everyone knew. Well, we picked a date and time, and the plan was to hit up the local pizza place and then watch a movie. I wish I remembered the movie because it would remind me exactly when this was, but I digress. So my lanky, awkward middle school self gets all ready. My mom drove me to her place, and I awkwardly waited around for her to get ready. It's then revealed to me that she's bringing a friend. We get into the car and make our way to the movies, and the entire trip is super silent and awkward. My mom was the one trying to make small talk with everyone, and it certainly wasn't helping. She dropped us off at the pizza place, which was directly across the street from the theater. I ordered 2 pizzas, 2 large pizzas. I didn't know how much these girls could eat, okay? My brain hadn't, and still hasn't, developed fully. So we got these 2 large pizzas, and I'm sitting across from 2 girls who are also very nervous and not the most social people. You'd think the third person would make it easier to have a conversation, but absolutely not for a bunch of teenagers. They each had 1 slice of pizza, and I tried to make up for the difference and ate like 4. We had to throw out some slices, and I wound up giving a whole pizza to these random people in the restaurant on our way out. I didn't know what I would have done with a whole pizza before going into a movie theater. We went and watched the movie and still hadn't really spoken much at this point. When we got out, we waited around for my mom to pick us up. So what does the teenage brain think is the natural next step of our date? The kiss, of course. I hadn't asked my dad about this specific situation, but the conversation had come up a while before. I don't remember how it came up, but basically, I remembered my dad saying I should ask if I could kiss a girl before doing it. So back to our date. We were waiting around, and I had to find a way to make my move where it's just the 2 of us. At least I had the foresight to not do this in public. Anyways, we walked over to the town's covered bridge, and I asked her if she was enjoying herself. She said yes, of course, and I leaned in and asked if I could kiss her. She was obviously super nervous, and she just goes, "No, thank you." So I had to reverse the lean-in technique to make it look like I was just trying to reposition myself. I said okay, and we made our way back to the parking lot of the movie theater. The car ride home was exactly as awkward and silent as the ride there. We still acknowledged each other's existence at school, but whatever I thought I had for her in my little emo heart was completely replaced with, well, guess I'll hold off on the dating thing for the rest of my life. It'd be funny to hear her perspective now that we're older, but I left the whole thing thinking that dates weren't really my thing. It wasn't until I was 17 when a girl was into me and made it obvious that I even thought about being in a relationship. That one lasted 5 years, so I don't even know what the moral of my story is. Just laugh at my suffering, please. Story 18. I matched with a girl on Tinder, and we decided on drinks downtown and a walk around a popular park to chat. Last minute, she messaged me to meet her at her place instead of the restaurant that was like 3 minutes from my subway stop. Fine, I have to get off the subway and walk 20 minutes in the opposite direction of the restaurant, but I'm a nice guy, so whatever. I show up at her place and she invites me in as she needs to finish getting ready. I sit on the edge of her bed as she gets ready, and all I can hear is people having intimate relations through the walls. She tells me it's her roommate and her new boyfriend, like it's totally casual. She then asked me if I wanted to compete with them to make her roommate jealous. I politely said no, and that I was starving and wanted to go eat. I didn't tell her I wasn't expecting anything and didn't have any plans for what she was suggesting. We walked to the restaurant, and she proceeds to talk about all her exes and how they ruined the relationships. Whatever, I can deal with it. Who hasn't complained about an ex, right? So dinner actually went pretty well, mostly because I had a few drinks to relax, and it was a chill restaurant. After dinner, she said she's tired and asked if I could walk her home. No problem. I already had a feeling this wasn't going anywhere, so I was excited to leave early. We get back to her place, and the roommate is in the kitchen getting drinks, and she straight up calls her a horrible name and tells her to stop being intimate with her ex so loudly in the next room while she's on a date. That's right. The roommate's boyfriend she was loudly being intimate with earlier was the ex of the girl I was on a date with. The roommate then made a comment about how I'm next, and they started a screaming match. I told her I was going for a smoke so they could hash it out, and the second the door closed behind me, I basically jogged like 3 blocks toward the subway to get out of there. I texted her when I got home and said I had fun getting to know her, but was not interested as we didn't have much in common. No response. A week later, she sent me an inappropriate picture and asked me to come over. I never thought I'd hear from her again, so I blocked her, and that was it. Worst part is, the restaurant was a fantastic Mexican place that she said she frequented, so I never went back out of fear of running into her again. Story 19. I don't really connect with animals. I don't want any pets, ever. Well, my profile has my 2 cats and a dog on it, so this isn't going to work out. Not sure why she swiped right on me or didn't notice when she asked what I was doing, and I told her I was out walking the dog. We do an hour-long loop of the neighborhood every day. One time, I met someone who had a profile of a physically fit, attractive woman my age, but the person who arrived was 15 years older and 150 plus pounds heavier. I decided to stay and not say anything about it because the texting conversation went well. But 5 minutes into the date, she started making offensive remarks and expressing racist opinions. I only stayed until she finished talking because the things she said were so outrageous that I needed to hear the end of the rant before I left. The only reason I stayed was so I could share the story with my friends later and laugh at how out of touch she was. And finally, I asked one person about what she does at her job because it sounded interesting. By the time the date was over, I hadn't said much of anything else. I heard all about her job, how she got into it, her friends, her college experience, her high school experience, her family, her ex, her other ex, that car accident she got into when she was a teen, her 3 trips to Disney World, and so on. Interestingly enough, she was upset I didn't talk more, and I thought, when? You didn't take a single breath for 45 minutes straight. When was I supposed to squeeze in a word or two? There was also one person who spent more time talking about Taylor Swift than anything else, and found a way to bring her into conversations where it didn't make sense. I figured she didn't want to date me. She wanted to date Taylor Swift, so I got out of there. At the time, I had only heard one Taylor Swift song and had no idea she was more than a one-hit wonder. Story 20. We agreed to meet at a beach bar. When I stepped out of my car, he basically ambushed me in the parking lot. His dating profile said he was 5'11". In reality, he was shorter than me. First red flag. If he lied about something so obvious, what else was he lying about? He also had an NRA sticker on his car, which he hadn't mentioned. I was already uncomfortable, but felt too awkward to turn around and leave. We got seated and ordered drinks. Then he began to interrogate me. When I say interrogation, I'm not kidding. Your dating profile said you work in animal care. So what specifically do you do in the animal care field? I was working at a dog daycare at the time. How many dogs are under your supervision? Only dogs, no other species? And how satisfied are you with this line of work? Do you plan to continue this as a career? Do you plan to go on to grad school? My answer, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. So you don't have any drive or ambition then? You feel you'd be competing with other students and they'd have an advantage over you? Do you like living here? What drew you to this place? How is this town different from where you went to college? Answer, It's full of yuppies and older people, whereas Gainesville is a college town. So, when you say yuppie, what is your definition of that term? When you say college town, what specifically do you mean by that? Have you ever been to Jacksonville or Tallahassee? How recently did you go there? What specifically did you do or see while you were there? I went to the zoo. So you like zoos then? Did you like Jacksonville? Answer, I don't know. So you hated it? Are you an only child? Any cousins? What do your parents do? Do they live in the area? Do you have a good relationship with them? Are they conservative? Do you consider yourself a conservative person? No. So you rebelled against your parents? Do you have any religious affiliation? What are your parents' religious affiliations? Regarding the bar band, how would you describe this type of music? What adjectives would you use to describe this music? Do you live in an apartment? Do you have any roommates, just you and the dog? Are you training your dog to be a guard dog and attack people? No? So he's docile then? This line of questioning creeped me out a little. How long have you lived in Florida? Have you ever been outside the state of Florida? What other states have you visited? Have you ever left the country? What other countries have you visited? Which one do you have the fondest memories of? Would you like to live there? Why? Just because of the scenery? How did you feel about the people? Did you interact with the locals? Have you ever been to New England? Is it on your list of places to go? No, not really. So you hate it then? You want to see it disappear? After nearly an hour of nonstop questions and my vague, non-committal answers, he finally started asking me what was wrong. Again, I really wanted to be honest, but I didn't have the courage to tell him to his face that he was incredibly irritating. Finally, he said, "Come on, I'm just trying to get to know you and have a good time." That was it. Him calling me baby was the trigger that finally broke my awkwardness about walking out. I pretended to go to the bathroom and left. Story 21. Within 5 minutes of sitting down to meet me, he decided to comment that I have a large chest, and mostly talked to my chest while I tried to finish my food and get out of there. I really liked the food. Right after the date, he sent me an unsolicited picture of himself, then demanded I return the favor because he sent one. Blocked. Another guy and I met at a bar for food and drinks. Eventually, it got incredibly rowdy, so we decided to talk in his car for a bit since it was still daylight. At least that's what I assumed, since it was too hard to hear much in the bar for a while. He lunged himself across the center console almost immediately to kiss and grope me. That was a quick exit and block. Most of the rest were just standard no connection or attraction in person after meeting online. Nothing crazy, just super boring people. Story 22. I met who I thought was a really great guy online, and after texting each other for 2 weeks, we finally met in person. He picked me up, and we had an awesome time together, so we decided to go back to his place. This is where things got interesting. As we were nearing his place, there was almost no one else on the road when suddenly, another car came out of nowhere, cut us off, and it turned out that everyone knew each other and had some kind of major disagreement. He throws his car in park, breaks out the tire iron from his back seat, and there are 3 guys trying to get at him. Fists are flying, people are getting hurt, and I still have no idea what's going on. We go back to his house, and he immediately wakes up his parents, who come out. It's like 3 a.m. now. This is still our first date, so now I'm also meeting his entire family. The cops show up. They don't arrest him, but tell him he needs to come down to the station with his parents. There's a discussion among all of them, and his dad agrees that he will personally drive him to the police station after they swing through my date's methadone clinic first as soon as it opens. Then he drops my date off at the police department and drives me home. It was a very awkward car ride back with my date's father that I had just met. Story 23. He was taking me skiing for my first time on our first date. He was pressuring me the whole way that I was going to go down black diamonds with him, which really scared me as I had never skied or snowboarded before in my life. While driving up to the mountain, we hit some ice. He overcorrected, and we went off the side of a cliff and got caught in some thick brush. I was suspended in the air by my seatbelt, and we both carefully maneuvered out of the vehicle. We climbed back up to the road, and a nice elderly couple called us a tow truck and took us back to their place for milk and cookies while we waited. They scolded him for driving too fast on the pass and for overcorrecting, and told us people die there every year. We didn't go skiing, much to my relief. And then he took me to McDonald's for dinner, which was sort of the last straw. He almost got us killed and didn't even think to at least take us to a sit-down dinner somewhere. That was the defining moment when I decided never to go on a date with this guy again. He asked, and I kindly declined. He understood, I guess, as he never tried to talk to me again. Story 24. I picked her up, and we went for a meal where she wouldn't stop talking, mainly about herself. I figured that she was just nervous, and that's just how it manifested. I drove her home, and she asked if I wanted to come inside. It wasn't late, and I thought she would be more relaxed at home, and it would make it easier to have a proper conversation. Once we were in her flat, there were a load of vivariums with a number of different lizards inside, which she insisted on getting out to show me. Now I like animals, and lizards are pretty cool, but I just wanted to chat and get to know her. Anyway, she got them out one by one and proceeded to kiss them and play with them while we attempted to talk. Eventually, I decided it was time to leave and said I should go, so she put the biggest lizard she had, that she'd been kissing and cuddling, away and tried to grab me and move in for a kiss, without even washing her hands or face. I had to basically dodge her and get out of there pretty quickly. I decided on the way home that it probably wasn't going to work out. Story 25. I was in my early 20s and somehow hitting way above my weight class. I was home from college for the summer and working at the Starbucks downtown that I had worked at whenever I was back home. She was a regular and worked at the hair salon across the street. She was categorically gorgeous. A lot of guys of all ages would hit on her, and I'd watch them crash and burn. My heart had just been broken, and I decided to ask her out after some playful banter over a couple of weeks. She lived about 30 minutes south of me, and I drove to pick her up for our outing. That's where the mistake began. I hadn't had much conversation of any true substance with her, but when we were in the car together for so long, she got pretty open with her opinions. This is when I learned about the hot crazy scale. Turns out, it's 100% accurate. Not only was she way too attractive for me, she was way too intense for me. She proceeded to go on a tirade about the Hispanic house cleaners, African Americans, especially Obama, and she threw in more than a few stereotypes about Asian people since we were driving for quite a bit that night. At some point during the date, she made it abundantly clear that she did not believe in using protection, and that was a deal breaker for her. I've never had so many warning bells going off all at once. It's one of the few times where the rational part of my brain won the battle. She is still hands down the most intense person I've ever met, who wasn't on any substances. In all, we probably spent about 4 hours together, at least an hour of which was in the car, where she managed to spew out offensive comments in rapid-fire succession, each worse than the last. She still came into Starbucks routinely and would chat with me after, but when she realized a follow-up call wasn't coming, her mean side came out. She will forever be the most attractive bullet I've ever dodged. Story 26. Had a nice casual coffee date with a guy I met on Hinge. It seemed innocent enough, and the guy seemed really great after talking for a bit. He didn't give off any weird vibes initially, but little did I know he was just saving that for the date. The first sign of trouble was when he told me to wear something red. That threw me off a bit, but I still went ahead with the date for reasons I'll never understand. We meet up at the cafe, and I'm actually surprised by how nice and charming he was. I slowly started forgetting the weirdness from before. However, there was still something a bit off about him. He didn't have social media, he didn't drink, which is fine, but he said it turned him into a different person, whatever that meant. And he was very evasive when it came to talking about himself. Then out of nowhere, he decided to tell me how much he likes tying people up at 4 p.m. in a second cup while we are surrounded by older folks. I decided I didn't want to stick around to find out more, so I played it off like it didn't bother me, then went home and never spoke to him again. Story 27. She showed up wearing a leather skirt, combat boots, a mesh top, a large Sunday hat, and sunglasses at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday in the middle of August. This was in South Florida, so I can't imagine how she was able to breathe with that on, given that we could only sit outside. She asked me what I do for a living, the only question she asked me that night. I mentioned I'm a designer, and she pointed out that she is one too. She pulled out her phone and showed me the work she's done in a collage-type app, saying she tries to sell her artwork online. She then mentioned she was also a writer working on a book that she hopes to use as an instruction manual for servers in the food industry because that's her day job, and nobody has done it yet. She continued to explain the banality of TV and how she only watches specific films that require a higher degree of insight. How Kanye West is a genius. Yeah. And then she made a comment about the people hanging out, as if they were inferior. As the night progressed, she bought tacos, and after finishing, she said she needed to find her dealer. I replied, I get it, priorities, and left, wondering who on earth I had just met. Story 28. Met this really pretty girl and decided on a dinner and a movie date. I arrived at the restaurant, and when she showed up, she looked stunning. I ordered an old-fashioned, and she said she couldn't decide on a drink and asked the waiter to come back. We started talking, and everything seemed fine. I was sipping my drink, and she still hadn't ordered. No problem. I figured she didn't actually want a drink. She apologized and then told me she was really out of it. I asked her if she was hungry because I was ready to order food. Sure, she said, go ahead and order. I'll find something. I ordered, and she sent the waiter away again. When my food arrived, she finally ordered a Cobb salad. It took almost an hour, but at least she finally ordered something. So we were talking over food, and she started telling me how she had been talking to her psychic. And apparently there's a curse on her. She had spent over $10,000 trying to get the curse lifted, but nothing was working. Finally, we finished our meal, and it was time to go to the movie theater. But she asked if instead I wanted to go back to her place and relax a bit before the movie. I'm sure she's the perfect girl for someone, just not for me. I ended up walking her home just to make sure she could find the place, and then went to the movies alone, never to ask her out again. Story 29. I went on a blind date with my sister's coworker. She was already drunk when I arrived. Her false eyelashes were crooked, and she had thick orange lipstick smeared all over her mouth. Obviously, she had applied them both while intoxicated. Her earrings didn't match. One was for pierced ears and the other was a clip-on. I took her to a new high-end Mexican restaurant that was getting good reviews. We were seated at the bar for 20 minutes because we were a little early. In that brief time, she managed to order and down 3 shots of tequila. When we were seated, she ordered a double margarita and the most expensive appetizer, crab ceviche, and entree, lobster pizza, on the menu. Then she got up to go to the ladies' room, and in the process of tripping over her chair, she knocked over a poor waiter who was pouring wine for the next table. The bottle smashed and another lady got her white slacks splashed. My date didn't even apologize, just got up and wobbled her way to the restroom. The moment she disappeared, I found our waiter, asked her to cancel our order, tipped her generously, and left, leaving a $100 bill with the next table as an apology. A couple of days later, she told my sister that we had a good time, that she really liked me, and asked her why I hadn't called. Apparently, the fact that I was completely absent for the last 3/4 of our date hadn't registered with her. Story 30. I was at a club, and my friend mentioned that he had 2 girls on the way to meet up with us. They arrived, and I was attracted to one of them because she had the face and body of a model. She was a little rundown looking for being in her early 20s, but still very pretty. 5'11" in heels, with big eyes, and a striking presence. At one point, we were at the bar ordering drinks, and she took the lollipop she was sucking on and set it down on the bar, not even on a napkin. It was a bit off-putting, but I dismissed it. It was dark and crowded, and I assumed she was just drunk and not in her right mind. We exchanged numbers and made plans to go for food and drinks the next week. I picked her up, and we went to a nice Chinese restaurant down the street. During the meal, she excused herself to use the restroom. When she returned, I noticed she was wearing a different shirt. Like the lollipop situation, I dismissed it again. I figured maybe she just changed because she was uncomfortable or something. I didn't even mention it. By now, I had gathered that this girl was a bit off. During the meal, she was acting a bit obnoxious, being loud and very touchy. We were both ordering drinks, but I could tell she was on something. I wasn't exactly living a clean lifestyle back then, so it was easy for me to overlook her wild behavior. She barely ate anything, so there was a lot of unfinished food that we took to go. We went back to my place and were hanging out on the couch, getting somewhat close. Then I noticed her body odor. It was a combination of poor hygiene, but I could tell that some of the odor was coming from her. I was grossed out, so I subtly backed off. She excused herself to use the restroom. I was living alone in a 2-bedroom apartment that had 1.5 baths. She was using the guest bathroom out in the living room where we were. About 20 minutes went by, and I was sitting on the couch thinking about how I was going to get out of this mess. She returned from the bathroom, and I told her that we needed to wrap up the evening, which immediately set her off. She started yelling and getting somewhat aggressive with me. To diffuse the situation, I was already on thin ice with my landlord for noise complaints. I started talking to her gently, saying, "Let's just continue the evening somewhere else. I'll call us a cab." Fortunately, she calmed down and agreed. The moment we got to my building's exit, I concocted my escape plan. We walked to the cab, I opened the door for her, she got in, and I handed the driver $20, more than enough for the ride and tip, and told him she lived just down the street. As I closed the door, she started yelling again, trying to get out of the cab to follow me. I made a dash for the side entrance to my building, unlocked it, and got inside. Crisis averted, or so I thought. For the next 30 minutes, I could hear her outside my building, shouting and causing a scene. I went inside my apartment, shut off all the lights, and hid in bed, just waiting for it to end. Eventually, it stopped. The next day I got home from work, and my building manager approached me in the lobby about the girl who was making a scene in front of the building the night before. I pretended I had no idea what she was talking about. Later that night I was feeling hungry, and it hit me. Whatever happened to the leftover Chinese food? It had been a wild evening, so I dismissed the missing food and went on with my life. About a week later, I noticed a foul odor coming from the guest bathroom. It was just a powder room, so I barely used it. I didn't put two and two together until a few days later, when I actually went in there to investigate. Under the sink, in the cabinet, was the leftover food. Containers, bags, everything, all rotting. One container was open and had its contents dumped out, seeping into the wood because of the glaze on it. Also, under the sink was a red cup with what was obviously some leftover food in it. Turned out this girl had some serious issues and had gone through some major trauma in recent years. I never found out exactly what because I didn't communicate with her again, even though she texted several times to hang out as if nothing had happened. I saw her a couple of months later at the same club, walked past her, and thank God she was so out of it that she didn't even recognize me. Story 31. I was on a first date with someone I met on a dating app. She seemed pretty normal while chatting online and texting. She wanted Indian food and was local to me, so I took her to my favorite local spot that has about 6 tables in it. It's small. She sat down and immediately started telling me about how her main hobby is her Instagram famous pair of grumpy cats. It wasn't the story that turned me off though, but the delivery. The entire time she talked, she spoke at a volume you'd use to get someone's attention across the parking lot. I mean, it was so loud I was in shock. She spoke incredibly fast and seemed so happy to have someone to talk to that I couldn't get a word in. Due to the volume, neither could anyone else. Everyone in the restaurant just sat back and listened to her. She seemed oblivious to it. I was mortified. When she would calm down, she would occasionally ask me a question, and I felt like I was on a date with everyone in the room because no one else was talking, and we were the entertainment. I suffered through the date, and she told me she had a great time. I let her down gently. I felt so guilty because she seemed like a genuine soul, but I just couldn't handle the attention. Story 32. This had to be nearly 20 years ago, if not a little more. There was a club bar place nearby that my friends and I liked to go to. They had a cover band play on Saturday nights, and it was a local band that was also pretty well known in my state. I was a college kid at the time, in my 20s. The entire night the bassist kept eyeing me. I was single and thought, yeah, this is nice, whatever. I connected with this guy a little after the show and later on social media. He asked me if I wanted to come over one night. I thought, yeah, why not? He lived close by, so I drove over around 11 p.m. or so. The first thing that really made me cringe was that he had pictures of him and his fiancée all over the house. I didn't even ask, I just already knew. We proceeded to sit on his couch, where he tried to have a very mediocre conversation with me. You know, the kind where the guy is only trying to get in your pants. So he asks you bland questions about your life that no one typically cares about. He started making out with me. I was already there, so I thought, okay, fine. He tried the whole going up my shirt thing, nothing offensive. Then, out of nowhere, he gets up and says, I'll be right back. I'm like, all right. I sit there awkwardly, looking at his walls decorated with happy photos of him and his fiancée. I literally felt trapped. Less than 5 minutes later, he reappears totally naked. I know I gave him a look that said, what the heck? He sat down next to me and I did nothing. He looked at me and said, want to touch it? I was like, not really, and admittedly laughed. So he started, taking care of himself. I wasn't into it at all, so I got up and said I had to go, leaving him alone in the dark, surrounded by photos of him and his fiancée. I couldn't have been more turned off. He tried messaging me after, saying he had a good time. Story 33. I had a gym class with this guy, and on our last week of class, we threw a party to celebrate people who lost the most BMI, did the most push-ups, ran the fastest mile, that kind of stuff. It's tradition to stop by a bar afterward for a few drinks. We had a few, and everyone was having a great time. When it was time to leave, he said he lived close and invited me to stop by for water to sober up since I lived a bit further away. He assured me he wasn't going to try anything. Sure enough, though, when we got there, I got my water, sat at the opposite end of the couch, so he didn't get the wrong impression. I was trying to find the right time to leave without interrupting the conversation or just walking out halfway through a card game. He kept trying to make out with me, and I kept saying, "No, you know friends don't kiss each other." I finally got up to leave, and as I was walking to my car, he smacked me on the back. I was so annoyed at this point that I just wanted to be home already. I told him he was extremely disrespectful and out of line, and he apologized and backed off. We still talked for a few weeks, but when I sat down and really thought about it, I realized how much he crossed boundaries in such a short time. I couldn't be attracted to someone with such little respect and understanding. The new season of my class is starting, and I don't even feel like signing up because I know he'll be there. Story 34. We messaged each other throughout the week and arranged a date. I honestly thought I was being catfished. The night came and she turned up and was who she said she was. The night started off great, and we got along like a house on fire. Then she started telling me about her ex, and this is where the red flags should have started waving. She talked about how he had depression and how he didn't want to deal with her anymore. She told me that they were going on holiday, had driven 3 hours to the airport, only for him to break up with her in the check-in queue. They then had to drive 3 hours back in silence. The night was going great, and after a few drinks we were dancing and flirting. We then sat down and she decided to sit on my lap. At this point she grabbed my head and started licking my face. Not kissing, but licking all around my mouth and cheeks. I was caught off guard and pulled away. She asked me what was wrong, and I hesitated and said nothing. She then got up and started complaining, saying, "You're all the same," and other stuff. She then said she'd had enough and was going home. I walked her to the taxi stand in silence and then started walking home to my flat, which was just around the corner. On my way, I heard her calling my name again and turned around. She then calmly asked me where we were going next, as if nothing had happened. I was a bit confused, but decided, why not, and suggested another pub. She agreed, but then all of a sudden she started screaming and shouting at me. At this point, I turned away and left. I see her every now and then, each time with a different guy. I always wish the guys good luck in my mind. It's a shame because we got on great for most of the night and she was stunning. Story 35. I met Gray while he was doing landscaping work for my parents. He asked me out and I said yes. Saturday came and he picked me up in a lifted Jeep. I was wearing a jean skirt because I had no idea what we were going to do. He said, "It's a surprise." He was wearing his work clothes. His shirt said Gray Landscaping. We started our date by picking up pizza. His friend worked there. We took the pizza to a park and had a pizza picnic. After we finished, he said he wanted to take me somewhere else. As we were getting into the Jeep, I was struggling because my skirt wouldn't allow me to climb in by myself. Instead of helping me, he saw me trying to get in and started laughing, saying in a sing-song voice, "No more pizza for Pam." Our next stop was my favorite coffee shop. Gray decided that he wanted to play chess with some of the older guys at the coffee place, so I just sat there. One of the old guys asked if I wanted to play, and Gray told him he doubted I knew how. He then proceeded to tease me and tell me that he would bet me $100 I couldn't beat him. So there I was, sitting in a coffee shop, $100 richer, and my date told me it was time to go. As we were driving, I thought we were going to my house, but Gray informed me that he needed to stop by his house first. As risky as it was, I agreed, and we went to his house, which was decorated in chili peppers, from the lights to the knickknacks. In the hour that we were at his house, he played Purple Rain on repeat because it was his favorite. Finally, I told him I needed to go. The disappointment was written all over his face. As soon as we got to my house, I got out of the Jeep as fast as I could. Gray opened his door, but I quickly told him goodbye and thanked him for the date before walking inside. I never saw or spoke to him again. Story 36. I went on a date with a girl I worked with whom I had known for a while and had a crush on. We were both dating other people previously, and it finally lined up that we were both single. She mentioned that she loved going to basketball games, so I invited her to see our hometown NBA team. I had 4 free tickets, and she said she had dinner plans with her twin brother and his boyfriend the night of the game. It was risky, but I told her she could invite them along. I picked her up, and her brother and his boyfriend met us at the game. It turned out to be a great decision. We all had a blast, and it was a perfect date so far. We held hands and kissed while leaving the game. Afterward, we decided to go somewhere else for a drink. We were just sitting and chatting, and things were still going great. She excused herself to the restroom and was gone for a while. When she came back, I asked if everything was okay. She said she was on the phone with a guy friend who was on his way to pick her up. I had only had 2 drinks the entire night and offered to drive her home. She proceeded to ignore me, got up from the table, didn't even say goodbye, and left. I saw her outside getting picked up. I had no idea what I had done wrong, as things were going very well up until that point. This was on a Friday, so I didn't see or talk to her until Monday at work. She approached me and asked how my weekend was, as if nothing had happened. I proceeded to ask her what happened, and she said she was tired, and her friend was in the area, so she decided to go home. She asked me to hang out again. I declined. So strange. Story 37. This is totally going to get buried, but here we go. I had a first date, more like a hangout, with this girl and her coworkers at her house one Saturday night. We had been talking online for a couple of weeks, and she seemed cool, and it seemed like a nice way to break the ice in an informal setting. Once I got there, everyone was welcoming, and I felt comfortable. The drinks were flowing, and slowly the coworkers started opening up more and giving this girl a hard time about her terrible love life. Shortly thereafter, they all started making bets that there wouldn't be a second date between her and me. They went on and on about how no one ever calls her back, and she constantly gets ghosted and can't figure out why. Obviously, that was a massive red flag and left me wanting more information. What was more concerning was that all of these people were social workers, and the more drunk they got, the more they discussed their clients' lives and cases in such vivid detail that it became one massive privacy violation after another. The girl I was talking to was taking calls from her clients well past midnight and while drunk, and the whole night just unraveled into an absolute ethical disaster. I figured the coworkers did me a favor, and I ended up making my way home, never to return. The complete lack of ethics and boundaries was a hard pass for me. We're somehow still friends on Instagram, and 4 years later, legend has it that she is still single. Story 38. We were walking in from a parking garage to a mall entertainment complex. There was this really long ramp, and he was holding my hand. A gigantic linebacker-looking dude grabbed my other hand while going the other way, jerked me away from him, and started dragging me to the parking garage, kicking and screaming. I grabbed the handle on the door and wouldn't let go, and eventually he dropped me and left because people were calling out for help. This was pre-cell phone days. My date just stood there and did nothing the whole time. I ran over to him and he didn't ask if I was okay. He asked, "Who was that?" in an accusatory tone. I was so scared and he stood there insinuating that I had tried to go off with another guy on our date. Other people came over to check on me and he was dismissing them and acting weird, so they all stuck around to talk to security. They checked the cameras near the entrance, and the linebacker dude had a friend with a car just outside when he grabbed me. My date kept asking them what signal I had given to the guy to let him know I wanted to go with him. They trespassed my date from the whole facility and found me a ride home. Story 39. I was introduced to Kay at a huge bar where I worked. I had a day job in IT, but being broke, I worked nights as a bouncer. Kay went to college with one of the bartenders. She was visiting Philly as she was about to move here in a few weeks for a teaching job. She was a small-town pageant girl and by far one of the most attractive people I've ever met. We immediately clicked and she kept me company at the door, talking about city life. We texted and talked a ridiculous amount over the next few weeks. Everything was great, no red flags. The late-night chats were getting flirty. She was funny, very attractive, single, and interested. Life was good. The group of college friends from the bar and I helped her move in and get settled. The vibe with Kay was great all day, and we all made plans to go to the pub down the street. We didn't drink much and were enjoying the dance floor vibes as we were both getting very handsy. As we were dancing, she whispered that she wanted to go back to her place. Life was very good. The dance floor was packed, and it included G, a local 30-year-old man who was disabled. He was there with his younger brother. I knew them. We were at the bro-nod level of acknowledgement. G was having a great time and doing his thing. As she was walking by, Kay got in front of G and started clearly mocking him by doing the Elaine dance from Seinfeld. It was outrageous, and she was just laughing. G's brother was upset and made a beeline to them. I moved over to her while giving him a wide-eyed, "I don't know what is happening" head shake. I prompted Kay to the bar to close our tab and asked, "What are you doing? You can't do that." She replied that it was just fun and that he was probably going to go home and laugh about it. I distinctly recall a moment where I considered the Barney Stinson hot crazy scale from How I Met Your Mother, but this wasn't crazy. This was just mean. I went over and apologized to G and his brother. I urged Kay that we should probably leave now. There wasn't much talking the rest of the night. It didn't come up until the next morning. I mentioned that she might want to apologize to G and his brother. I told her they are local, and she will see them around, and it's going to be awkward. She did not see anything wrong with it. There was some back and forth on how that was offensive or not, and the vibe was gone. We didn't date after that, but Kay was very much a part of my life for a while. When she couldn't live on the teacher's salary, her friends got her a job at the bar. She was an awful, condescending human being. We were all hustling our way through our 20s, and she made it clear this work was beneath her, and just didn't care about it at all. She quit after a year when she married a finance guy. They divorced a year later, and she moved back to her hometown. Story 40. I had a man arrive late to our first date, 45 minutes late, at a restaurant I had never been to, which he had talked up a lot. He arrived, then talked for an hour. Still, we hadn't even ordered food yet, and would glare at the waitress every time she would come by. I was getting incredibly irritated over his behavior, and I was starving, so I just ordered before he got a chance to talk. He then proceeded to have the waitress recite the entire menu by memory because he couldn't figure out what he wanted, even though he admitted he'd never been there before. After we got our food, he would glare at the waitress whenever she came by to ask how the food was. I just told her we were fine and that she was doing great. The guy then proceeded to ask me why I was anxious. I deflected by telling him I have general anxiety disorder, and he told me that was fake because people can't just be anxious over nothing. Then he started saying he loved my name because it was similar to one of his favorite books. I got confused because the main character of that book is meant to represent hedonism, narcissism, and aestheticism. So I asked him some questions about it, non-judgmentally, because I love academic conversations about books, and he got flustered that I asked before admitting he had never read the book. He spent another hour just talking about random stuff before he got up to go to the bathroom and jokingly said, "Don't leave before I get back." I paid my half of the bill, found the waitress privately, and told her she was amazing and that she should take nothing he said or did to heart because he was being difficult. She started to get teary-eyed and told me this was her first job and she was still in high school and was terrified she was doing something wrong. I gave her a huge tip, reassured her again, and then got the hell out of there. I never spoke to the guy again, but he texted me later trying to be flirty and asking when we'd see each other again because he thought it was a perfect date.